And the first part of this chapter, I believe that the theme of this chapter, or the majority of this chapter, is going to be prayer. As we know, the Babylonians have been defeated. It is not unreasonable to believe that the royal family has been killed, and that in verse 1 we hear of Darius, the Medes and the Persians. They combined together to make quite a force. Now this is the silver section on your statue, the Medes and the Persians. And Darius sets up a pyramid system government, and that's pretty much been a business model for a very long time. You have one at the top, then you have people under him, and then people under them, and so forth down the line. And Daniel, in verse number 3, then this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes because an excellent spirit was in him. That's important to remember, isn't it? It is not where we are that matters. It is that we are trying to bloom where we are. God placed us where we are, and He wants us to thrive in it. Now, it could have been, Daniel could have been mean and hateful, and it's like Haman had that servant, and she could have very well said, he has leprosy, just let him go. They drugged me over here, I have no right to be here. But she too, we could say that she had an excellent spirit within her, didn't we? Because she said if my master was in Israel, he could be cured of this leprosy. And eventually he was. So it was Daniel's attitude about where he was and how he served. In fact, we're going to see some of the children of Israel through the book of Daniel that were excellent citizens. Don't you agree that the best kind of citizens in any country are Christian people? Because they are here to foster peace. They are here to serve. They are here to acknowledge. And the most powerful thing we have is prayer. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Verse 4. Then the presidents and the princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could not find none occasion nor fault. Now, the problem with ambitious men? There is no loyalty, no family, no considerations. It's what they want, where they want to be. So now they're looking at Daniel. Daniel's been promoted to a position that he wanted, or they wanted. And so we're going to have to find something that we can use against him. Sounds something like John the Baptizer, doesn't it? They were looking for something to get him. And he provided that when he told Herod concerning his adulterous marriage. They also did that with Jesus, didn't they? And we're going to notice Sunday that his whole trial system was based on false information. They brought in false witnesses. What the law required was witnesses. And they even arrested him during a time when they were not supposed to. But they had false witnesses. And, when Jesus said that he will build the temple in 3 days, he was not talking about the physical temple that Herod took 40 years to build. He's talking about himself, wasn't he? False witnesses. And then, of course, the betrayer, Judas, who betrayed him. So they're looking to find something that they can use against him, but they couldn't find anything. For as much as he was faithful, neither was there any error or fault found in him. Boy, to find people that are loyal, find people with character, find people with integrity, that is a hard thing to do. Daniel was such a man. Okay? Now, that's not going to stop him, but then Daniel was such a man. Okay? So they decided in verse 5, we can't get him concerning his place, but we can get him concerning his God. Isn't that something? Sometimes, dear ones, we may be model citizens, but when someone tries to turn us and or pass laws that are against the work of God, then we have a problem. Okay, we have a problem. I saw on the news that Indiana has passed a thing about giving children transgender medication. That they've ordered it to be stopped. And there are people going all crazy about it. These are kids, for goodness sake. These are kids. In fact, I've known teenagers, 16, 17-year-old boys, had no idea what they wanted to do, what kind of job they wanted to get. I asked one of my grandsons one time, what do you want to do? You get out of school. I don't know. So anyway, that was something like what I did too. I was a senior in high school, went into the counselor, said, I want to go to college. She opened my file, looked at it, closed it, and said, you don't have the education for it, go back to class. So, sometimes, dear hearts, we need to be able for people to know that we are Christian enough that if we were to get in trouble because of it, we could be arrested, shouldn't we? All right? So, but we can get him concerning his God. All right? Their salutation in verse number 6, O Darius, live forever. So now, we're going to appeal to his pride. For some people, that's a very good way to get them. Appeal to their pride. Verse 7, and all the presidents of the kingdom and governors and princes and counselors and captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save the king, O king, he shall be cast into the den of lions. That's a pretty good trick, isn't it? It's not uncommon for emperors and rulers to believe that they're gods. The Egyptians treated their rulers as gods. And although it's not said so, but wouldn't you agree that the Pope is considered pretty close to a god? He cannot do any sin, and whatever he writes, whatever he says, goes. I laughed one day when some people were trying to say that there is unrest in the papal city in Rome. I said, just tell the Pope and he can send them to Alaska. They won't challenge him because he is the duly elected Pope of the church. So anyway, so how are we going to get him? We're going to get him on the principles of his God. Okay? Verse 8, now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing that it may not that it be not changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which altereth not. Now there, When the king signed it and his ring was stamped on that document, it became law. Even he could not change it. Okay? The law of the Medes and the Persians. And they knew that if they got the king to write the decree and sign it and stamp it with his ring, that it was unalterable. Now, England today does not operate under a king system, but back in the day, the king had a ring. He would sign it, he would stamp his ring on it, and you know how they use the wax? And they would put his ring on it, and then it became unalterable. It was his orders. Okay? Hold your place here. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter number 4. And did I write this down wrong? Remember, I'm looking for the place where we are sealed. It's chapter 1. Is that chapter 1? Sealed to the day of redemption.
Verse 30 of chapter 40.
Verse 30 of chapter 4. Okay. Verse 30 of chapter 4. I was close by, wasn't I? And grieve not the Holy Spirit of God, whereby ye are sealed unto the day of redemption. That seal is a document with wax. Sealed. I heard one preacher say one time that sealed is like how his mother used to can garden things, would put a seal on it. And do some of you remember when they would make jelly and they would put that paraffin on top of it that you had to scrape off the top and get to the good stuff? That's the way they sealed it, but that's not the seal he's talking about, is it? He's talking about a seal of a document. We are sealed until the day of redemption. The only one that can break that seal is the Lord himself. Revelation speaks of 7 seals. Okay? Take the book and break the seals. And again, that is picturing the seal that is put on documents. Now, nowadays, official documents, they have a kind of like a crimper thing, right? When they'll put on there, and a notary public will squeeze that and it'll make an indentation on the paper. Well, years ago they used to use wax seal, red seals. Okay, in some places and some instances, the seal is still used. So, Darius, we want you to make this decree. We want you to sign it. We want you to put your stamp on it, and it will cannot be changed, even by you. Now, they don't realize that they're going to get themselves in a terrible, terrible mess because they're trying to trick Darius into doing something he really didn't want to do. Okay? So, now we wait. In verse number 10, now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went to his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he did aforetime. Now we would say, wow, that is a statement of faith, isn't it? Okay? Remember in chapter 3 when those three malcontents told Nebuchadnezzar that we don't care. We are not going to bow to that image. If you throw us in the fire and we perish, no matter what's going to happen, we are not bowing to that image. Okay? Now, in the religious community today, there are some serious stuff going on. One of which is the Methodist Church is about to split in half. Okay? Because there are a section of the Methodist Church that wants to bring in all the new stuff and be acceptance of everybody and everything. And then there are those who want to stay the course like it was before. So now each church has to decide. And they have to be careful as they decide, because if they do not follow the regulations set down by their superiors, they could lose their building. So they have to be patient and wait. But it's going to split. I've wondered for a long time if the ABA is about on the verge of split, because there are churches using versions that I wouldn't use and I wouldn't recommend. Okay, they're using the NIV, if you're wondering. I don't recommend it, I don't use it. Okay, out of my sources of when I want to read a different version of something, that's not the one I choose to read from. But it hasn't happened so far, has it? But one thing I'm grateful for in our work is that the churches are independent and sovereign under Christ. Nobody can tell us what to do, where to go, where to send our money, and I'm grateful for that. So now, Daniel has made the choice. How important is prayer? Well, it's one of the most important tools that we have. One, we have the Word of God, God speaking to us through His Word, and we have prayer that we're able to pray to Him. How often are we to pray? Pray without ceasing. Right. Pray without ceasing. In Romans chapter 8, in our difficulty, for we know not how we should pray as we ought, Paul wrote. We are a little bit prejudiced, because we're always going to ask the Lord for health and blessing on whoever it is that we know and around us. And the hardest thing we have to do is to pray for His will. You know, Jesus prayed, not my will, but thine be done. And where was he headed? Prayer is a powerful thing. I honestly believe all the years that I've been here that prayer has made a tremendous difference in the lives of all of us. Our prayer team, those on our prayer list, and others are faithful to pray when they're called upon. Is everybody doing your daily prayer time at 11 o'clock? And if you do not have email or anything like that, 11 o'clock every day, we have been pausing to pray. Pray for our services. Pray for the sick. Always remember me in your prayers. Pray for guidance. I mean, we could spend a little time there. But it's important that we pray. Didn't Jesus pray all night one occasion? So, prayer is very important. Daniel was not going to allow even a decree from Darius to deter him from his daily prayer time, 3 times a day. Open his window facing Jerusalem, and he would pray. Sometimes if we're not careful, we'll get too busy during the day. Our minds cluttered with so many things that we forget to stop and begin our day with prayer. So whenever it's convenient for you, have your prayer time and Bible reading every day, because it's very important. And when things are difficult and uncertain, that's the best time to pray, isn't it? When you're not sure what's coming, that's the best time to pray. Because God is faithful to hear us. The Lord is not restrained on the language. He can hear anybody, anywhere, in their own language, anytime. Okay? All right. Well now, we've done it. We got the decree signed. We got things set up. And now, we just need to watch him. Because they knew that he would continue his prayer time 3 times a day, every day. So we just wait. And sure enough, here they come a-running. Darius, you signed a decree that every person is to pray, and they're only to pray to you, and here we have Daniel. Okay? Verse number 12. Then they came near and spake before the king concerning the king's decree that the decree hast thou not signed. King's decree, hast thou not signed a decree that every man that shall ask a petition of any god or man within 30 days, save of thee, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, the thing is true according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which altereth not. Then answered they and said before the king, that Daniel. We got our trap set, we're ready. That Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regardeth not thee, O king, nor the decree that thou hast signed, but makest his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased with himself, and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. Daniel, no doubt Nebuchadnezzar called some people, sat down together. How can we fix this? How can we fix this? And they couldn't, could they? It cannot be altered, even by the king. So to the den of lions he would be sent. Now I remind you that these lions, den of lions, these animals were treated unkindly. They were half starved. It didn't matter what landed on the floor, they would go after it. Under normal conditions, they wouldn't have went after anything because they were so hungry. So the king had no choice. Verse 18, and then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting. Neither were instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went from him. In other words, he stayed up all night. Okay? Now, I'm not sure of the time frame between when Darius came to power and this incident. But Darius thought enough of Daniel that he would try to find out a way to get out of this decree, and that he would stay up all night and petition for Daniel. He rises early in the morning, hastened to the den of lions. And when he came to the den, verse 20, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions. Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and hath shut the lion's mouth, that they have not hurt me, for as much as before him innocence was found in him, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt. So he was spared, wasn't he? Only God can do that. Close the mouth of hungry lions. However, once he knew Daniel was all right and out of there, he turned his attention to the accusers, didn't he? And now it is your turn to have your part in that den, and I'm certain they did not survive. So, prayer. Daniel prayed 3 times a day. I think there's a kid's song, isn't there, about Daniel prayed 3 times a day? And his prayer as he faced Jerusalem, no doubt a desire to go home, but he continued to work and labor with an excellent spirit and gave him the position in favor of the emperor, and when they tried to get him, they got themselves. So my admonishment to you and to me, number 1, let's be prayer warriors. Can keep on praying. You can pray anywhere, anytime. You can pray driving a car, just don't shut your eyes. You can pray at home. It's, everyone usually, when we have meals, we say grace, don't we? And sometimes that can get kind of repetitious if we're not careful. But prayer every day. And Daniel's example of his faithfulness to his God, even in the midst of adversity. I believe Paul and Barnabas, that we ought to obey God rather than men, when they told them to stop talking about Jesus. Be quiet about Jesus. Now next, I would invite you to read chapter 7, because we're going to hit another group of images that are shown, which is also represented in that statue. It's just another part of it. Remember the lion and the bear, a leopard, and then a dragon. And we'll start discussing some of them. Then we'll continue Daniel, the book of Daniel, and the book of Revelation. One writer said that Daniel and the book of Revelation were the last books written. So Daniel was the last of the Old Testament, and Revelation was the last of the New Testament. Some of the things that are mentioned in Daniel are mentioned in the book of Revelation. Okay, so obviously it is a prophecy book. Both of them are prophecy books that God is showing through Daniel. And then, remember, we are going to see that God touches the heart of Cyrus and allows them to go back home. And help me here, Nehemiah and Ezra, when they're allowed to go back home, and one builds the wall, the other builds the temple. So that's also found through the book of Daniel. Okay, stand together, please.